2. A treatise on metaphysics. If the mind immediately perceives ideas but the ideas are representatives of things without, then the truth of those representative ideas is in doubt. Immanuel Kant had addressed himself to demonstrating, within limits, the truth of perception in his Critique of Pure Reason. Peirce as a teenager had studied Kant assiduously and then, in his early 20s, rejected Kant's critical transcendentalism as an unwitting return to faith. Peirce preferred to base philosophy on a frank acknowledgement that knowledge always contains an element of faith, an undemonstrable but necessary belief that the normal representations of truth within us are really correct, as he says in the following extract from a projected book of which he wrote 10,000 words in 1861. In the three sorts of representation that the youthful Peirce here identifies, copy, sign, and type, he adumbrates his eventual general typology of signs as icon, index, and symbol. Source: Writings of Charles S. Peirce, 1:72, 83. Introduction. Chapter 3 on the uselessness of transcendentalism. 1. The standpoint of the transcendentalist when the view that metaphysics is the study of the human consciousness is carried out in a one-sided way, in forgetfulness that it is as truly philosophy and also the analysis of conceptions, it produces transcendentalism, better named criticism, which is the system of investigation which thinks necessary to prove that the normal representations of truth within us are really correct. 3. On faith, a need of it, I shall show alpha that the transcendentalists conclude with a return to faith. Beta, that the use they make of it in their own procedure is the source of all that is valuable in their investigations. Gamma, that while their own faith is necessarily blind, their reasoning is not so close as to leave no room for demonstrably trustworthy faith. I. Kant's work in inference is involved in every cognition. Proof. Relative cognition is the recognition of our relations to things. All cognition of objects is relative, that is, we know things only in their relations to us. Every cognition must have an object, the subject of the proposition. The faculties whereby we become conscious of our relation to things are known as perceptions or sense. Every cognition contains a sensual element. Now the information of mere sensation is a chaotic manifold, while every cognition must be brought into the unity of one thought. Every cognition involves an operation on the data. An operation upon data resulting in cognition is an inference. NC. This demonstration is extracted from Kant. It does not extend to the cognition I think. Nothing is certain except what rests on the combined testimony of the senses and I think. Proof. All knowledge, as we have just seen, is an inference from sensual minor premises. In metaphysics, all inferences have major premises. All knowledge is inferential except the I think. No cognition is certain which rests only on what is inferential. NC. Such is Kant's reasoning. He then proceeds to test all our conceptions as to objective validity by finding whether they are anything but particular expressions of the I think or of sensuousness. The following he makes objectively valid: the form of the external sense space, the form of the internal sense time, the conceptions of the understanding I. 2 of quantity, of quality, unity, reality, plurality, negation, totality, limitation. 3. 4 of relation, of modality, substantia, et accidents, possibility, impossibility, causality, existence, non-existence, action and reaction, necessity, contingency. The following can never enter into any certain thought. The ideas of reason. 1. The immateriality, incorruptibility, personality, animality. 1 of the soul. 2. 3. God. Alpha. Though Kant cannot demonstrate the validity of the ideas of pure reason, yet he chooses to believe it. Although there is not to him one whit more probability that they are true than that they are false, still he trusts in them, he has faith. Beta. He also takes the validity of sensibility and of the I think for granted. Yet only by doing so has he made any solid work. Gamma. A part of his argument is that nothing which rests only on what is inferential can be certain. This is not axiomatic nor demonstrable. It therefore leaves hope of proving the contrary, which establishes the validity of faith. B. Reason of faith. Unfaith is either total or partial skepticism. The different faculties have different realms by which they are distinguished. No faculty is to be trusted out of its own realm. Hence no faculty can derive any support from another, but each must stand upon its own credibility. No one faculty has more inherent credibility than another. Partial skepticism is inconsistent. Total skepticism condemns itself. Faith is the only consistent course. The argument has the following advantages. 1. It puts faith on the same ground as all certitude. 2. It does not make it so sure that it is no longer faith. 3. By showing that faith is inherent in the very idea of the attainment of truth, it makes its acceptance axiomatic, and thus explains how we were already sure before we had reasoned about faith. See nature of faith. I. What faith is not. 1. It is not a purely intellectual principle, it is an unaccountable impulse to confide in certain truths. This is forgotten by those who are over-anxious about the details of evidence in religion. They forget that with the highest certitude of inspiration and of history, belief still depends on an internal impulse. 4. Some things we should not believe though the angel Gabriel told us, while true religion is instinctively accepted by the ingenuous mind. 2. Faith is not peculiar to or more needed in one province of thought than in another. For every premise we require faith and nowhere else is there any room for it. This is overlooked by Kant and others who draw a distinction between knowledge and faith. Wherever there is knowledge there is faith. Wherever there is faith, properly speaking, there is knowledge. 3. There is no such thing as having immediate faith in the statements of others, be they men or angels or what. For whenever we believe statements, it is either because there is something in the fact itself which makes it credible or because we know something of the character of the witness. In either case there is a because whose major premise is some principle concerning general characters of credibility. To believe without any such because is mere credulity. 2. What faith is. 1. It is the recognition by consciousness of itself. It is the strength of that faculty by which abstractions are conceived. 2. It is the hearing of the testimony of consciousness, which develops into trust. 2. It is the hearing of the testimony of consciousness, which develops into trust in every man till there is reason for distrust and a spirit of obedience to the law of God. 3. It is the vigor of that part of the mind which is in communication with the eternal verities. By this, mountains are moved. 3. Effect of faith on transcendentalism. 1. Criticism is entirely swept away as useless. 2. Transcendentalism as a study of the outreaching of the human mind retains its full value. 3. The study of consciousness is the examination of abstractions by analysis of conceptions. Book I. Principles of Metaphysical Investigation. Chapter I. Man the measure of things. In the introduction we have considered the nature of metaphysics, and have rejected certain false notions of its procedure. In our investigations, metaphysics is to be taken as the analysis of conceptions. We need not ask the critical question, but still there is a question of uncritical transcendentalism with which every method of philosophy must open. It is, how should the conceptions which spring up freely in our minds by virtue of the constitution thereof be true for the outward world? In this question we detect 3 leading conceptions: truth, the innateness of ideas, externality. Let us analyze each of these. 1. Of truth. True is an adjective applicable solely to representations and things considered as representations. It implies the agreement of the representation with its object. The simplest kind of agreement of truth is a resemblance between the representation and its object. I call this verisimilitude, and the representation a copy. Resemblance consists in a likeness, which is a sameness of predicates. Carried to the highest point, it would destroy itself by becoming identity. All real resemblance, therefore, has a limit. Beyond the limits of resemblance, verisimilitude ceases. Verisimilitude is partial truth. Whatever claims to be a representation, a portrait for example, is a representation. Truth is that which, claiming to be a representation, is a representation. Truth has no absolute antithesis. Falsehood also claims to be a representation. It is an imperfect copy of truth. Verisimilitude is falsehood. From chapter 3 of the introduction, it follows that there is no falsehood in our conceptions. The truth of conceptions is not verisimilitude. Be a representation agreeing with its object, without essential resemblance thereto, is a sign. The truth of a sign, I denominate veracity. Veracity consists in a constant connection between the sign and the thing, for if the sign sometimes goes without the thing, then it may speak falsely, and if the thing goes without the sign, it may be belied in negative cases. Moreover, a sign cannot exist as such the first time it is presented, because it must become a sign. Conceptions claim as much truth the first time they are presented as they ever do. The truth of conceptions is not veracity. See, the objection to verisimilitudes being the truth of conceptions is its limitation as to completeness, the objection to veracities is its limitation in beginning. Neither is open to the objection against the other. But veracity was called that kind of truth which was not verisimilitude. Conceive, however, veracity to be perfect, to be founded not upon convention but upon the very nature of things. And what have we? 1. The nature of a thing is that which it derives from its origin. Derivation not in time is the relation of accident to substance. Hence, an invariable connection in time is the relation of accident to substance. Hence, an invariable connection in the nature of things is unity of substance. 2. The qualities of things are founded in the nature of things, hence, unity of substance implies perfect correspondence of qualities. 3. Hence perfect veracity is of a distinct character from cognizable veracity, and it approaches quite as nearly perfection of verisimilitude. I will call it verity, and the representation a type. 4. Since conceptions perfectly correspond with qualities, and since they have a connection therewith in the nature of things, they are types of things. Note 1. Animal ID equals existence as a principle of life in matter.